Good evening and welcome to InDemand. I'm Trudy Kerr.
And I'm Jane Dennis. With more books being written than ever before, being an author is a tough career choice. We speak to two Maltese women in that space.
Absolutely. Tonight we have two women who've recently had work published here in Malta. We speak to Leanne Ellul, whose powerful book, Grammar, has just won the National Prize for Youth. Good for her. And we also speak to Monique Chambers, who's diverted from her journalistic career to take time out to write an audiobook, Table 7.
First up, we speak with Monique. Welcome, Monique. Lovely to have you here. You look splendid. I particularly like
nice.
your top. I really like that
I like the skirt.
Oh,
so you come on the show.
I'll take
She's not going to make it out without...
I'll come again. Look very good. Lovely. And thank you for joining us. So I know that you have been a journalist and you've moved into the creative field. Tell me a bit about your background as a writer.
Mostly it's work-related. It was purely PR, set up in PR agencies in the UK, basically, writing mostly about technology and data warehousing and things that aren't very sexy.
Oh.
And also
Are you saying data warehousing is not sexy?
Well, I don't even know what it is. I'm sitting here going, really?
Not to the average Joe.
I got all excited there. Data warehousing.
So I used to write about quite deep and dark technology and, you know, processes and things that you need to... instructions on how to...
Did you think you were going to be talking about that?
No. So, writing instructions for a chocolate company as well in manufacturing.
How lovely. Did you get to test everything?
A lot.
Brilliant,
actually,
well
so
done.
That was quite good fun. And then after that, I ended up sort of semi-retiring to Malta when I was about 35.
Because you are half Maltese.
Yes, mother's Maltese. And I ended up moving here when I was about 35 and started working for a local newspaper, writing about tourism and all the things there were to do in Malta. And the food and everything else that was going on. I ended up working for Gourmet magazine for a year, so I did that. And then I set up my own magazine from there. So it's always been, writing has always been part of my work and part of my life, really, even writing poetry when I was a kid, whatever. So. And
that's the piece that interests me quite a lot.
Well, no, because I've been talking to you, and we're going to come to that, because we've been talking for a while, and I know you quite well, and I know that this has been a very exciting time for you. But before we get to that creative writing process, how different is that process from your journalistic work? Do you have to sit down, and is it a different part of the brain? Do you have to think differently? How does that work?
Definitely. I think you really have to have a clear head. It's not that you can put in your diary, today I'm writing a part of my book.
Right.
Really?
You clear a day, but if you don't wake up with a line in your head, it just doesn't...
Serious?
Yes, it just doesn't happen. For me, it just doesn't happen that way. But when you're writing about... you know, a new product that's being released, it's very factual. There are certain things you have to get in. There's a formula to the way press accept materials. So everything is very sort of formulaic. There's no sort of real creativity. The best fun you have is writing the headline, to be honest, and often putting quotes together, because you're writing a quote for someone usually that you've never met. So you're writing what they think about this development, even though you will have never met them and they will have never met you. So that's the fun bit of it, but the rest of it is very...
Do you see them as two completely different... Would you even say that they're two different things? They happen to be writing, but they're different things.
I think it's... writing fiction, for me, is more... You really have to dig deep. You have to be more honest with yourself. You can't... There's nothing else to refer to. This is your thoughts.
So does that mean that journalism is easier, would you say?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it?
Absolutely, yes.
OK.
Because you're just reporting.
Right.
You're just... Somebody else has created a product or a piece of news, something's happened, and you're reporting on that fact, you know.
But you are reporting on it, but you also have your people have loaded opinions. That's why there's certain different... People read paper A or they read newspaper B because they like the suggestion that each journalist gives.
But it's based on something that someone else has given you. So regardless of what the product or the fact is, it's somebody else's.
Yes.
You haven't had to find that fact, and the character is the character that you're writing about. If you're writing about a minister, you know, he's real. He's real. You can point to him. He has history. He has a story that you can refer to. When you're creating a character in fiction, They're somebody you're literally creating, what they look like, what they sound like, what they wear, how they smell, everything about them. You make them real.
And I listened to your audiobook this morning when I was walking the dog, and one thing that really came across me, you talked about your characters, you're very, very in-depth in your description, down to the detail. And I'm wondering as well whether that is something that is different to journalism as well, because you're thinking about the detail and you're trying to bring that to life so that people can understand. If you're talking about, I don't know, a politician, everybody knows what that politician looks like, and you're delivering a specific piece of information that's relevant to that story.
Yes.
Does that mean that you can be successful in both, or are you just fortunate?
I hope so.
Not you personally, I mean generally speaking.
Well, there's a lot of diversification in Malta, which is something that we've talked about quite a lot during the shows, that people do this, but they also do that. So it's a valid question. It's two things that people would think is one thing, but actually they're two very different fields.
They are very different, and you're going to work and writing what you have to write. It's fine, it's routine, and it's very easy to schedule in your day. But when I was writing Table 7, it's all about people watching. So you'd see someone that would catch your eye, or something would happen, and or you'd hear a snippet of something. You think,
So, when you told me about that, it made me quite paranoid. I was like, oh, yes, hi, Monique.
Don't eat with your mouth open. I think this is the learning point here.
But that's it. It's when you can refer to a politician, for example, you know exactly what they look like, you know exactly their habits. You have to say one line, and everybody knows what you're talking about.
But that brevity frightens me. The fact that you can, in the creative process, you can let yourself go to the extent that you want to explain somebody, but to shrink everything down and pick out the nuggets, that to me strikes me as a real skill.
I would like to think so as well, because with my previous career in food writing and travel writing, you're trying to entice people to do what you're enjoying. So you can't just say, oh yes, the steak was very nice and it had a nice sauce and the wine was nice. You can't say nice, you have to really describe it so that people go and order what you ordered. They have to go buy what you bought, they have to go and see what you saw. So that skill, I think I developed over years working for the paper and the magazines, and this is something now when I look at people, I can really describe them. I feel.
But come back to my question before, does that mean that all journalists can creatively write, or all creative writers can be journalists? Or do you think that there are some writers who are led more to one area than another? I mean, are they just... Because you're talking about two completely different things, and I'm wondering how transferable they are.
I think they're separate animals, because if you're a proper journalist, not a sort of PR-type journalist like me, if you're a proper political or whatever journalist, you have to go away and dig and dig and dig and dig and find your story. You have to be really tenacious, on the ball, everything has to be factually correct. Your opinion is your opinion, but you still have to report the story. And they may not be the types, because they probably don't have the space in their head all the time to actually be creative, because they're just, after the story.
You talked earlier about being a poet when you were young and writing poetry. And Pulitzer Prize-winning author Anne Tyler said, for me, I love Anne Tyler. For me, writing things down was the only road out. And I think what she means by that is that it's helped her deal with a lot of things. So writing was a process that was just part of how she lived her life. Why do you write?
Some of that is true, actually. Something's happened in your life that just won't go away. Or something bugs you, or sometimes you also just want to send a message to someone, and you know they're going to read it because they're a friend of yours or whatever, and you plant it, or they're part of that character is obviously influenced by either somebody you've known, in my case, or somebody you've seen. But you just want to say, it's okay, this has happened, or this happened to me, you did this to me, and just
wow. So the reading, but it's a cathartic process to just get things down,
and that's I think why you can't diarise it.
Stop using large words, ladies, please. Thank you very much indeed. Listen to the pair of you. You're obviously both writers. I diarise this. For anybody that doesn't know what that means writing it down, making notes. Yes, thank you.
But you have to, you wake up in the mood. It might be at 3 o'clock in the morning that thing just won't leave you, and you want to have that dialogue, and it could be somebody from 10 years ago in your past that you can no longer speak to, but you just want to...
So it's a therapy for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, moving on from that, you mentioned also, and this astonished me, because I'm not a writer, and I know that both of you are writers, but I assumed that you could get up in the morning and you could just, say, I'm going to sit there and write. And you're saying that you can't. Now, that sounds a bit like songwriting as well, because and I always assumed with songwriting it was because the music didn't come or the music and the lyric. But what is for you then is the hardest bit of being a writer? Is it finding that creativity?
I think for me the very hardest is the first line. I'm not somebody who can draw a skeleton and then go back and build back. It starts and it keeps going, and then when the character has stopped, he or she has stopped. And they've done their piece, or that now they're going to interact with the next character who's developed or whatever, and then somebody else might come along further along and interact with them as well. But I can't start without the first line. I absolutely have to have the first line in my
How long does that
book.
take?
I mean, this book took a while to come together, and it's not very long. But when I wrote the first characters, they happened, in an afternoon.
So. Whoa!
But it had to wait until, I'd seen this couple I wanted to pick on, essentially. I wanted to write about. But it took a while until I could cut down in my head what I actually wanted to say so that it would come out.
Wow.
That's the journalist.
Yeah,
that's the editing. That's the editing, probably, of being a journalist, being able to fine-tune.
That's quite amazing. I expected you to say something completely different. And I am absolutely loving talking to you. We are going to take a very short break, but don't go anywhere. Go get that cup of tea, that glass of wine, or a cup of coffee, whatever you want to do. Make sure you're back here in just a few moments.
Welcome back to In Demand, where we're talking about women being writers. We've got two fantastic Maltese women writers with us, and we've been joined by the lovely Leanne Ellul, who's won a prize for her latest or first novel, Grabber. Lovely, well done.
And congratulations on that.
Congratulations.
And fantastic. I'm looking forward to talking about the book in a little bit.
And I'm looking forward to taking it and reading it.
No, you're not. I'm taking it.
No, I'm taking it. Oh. Many writers are avid readers. So how much are you influenced by what you read?
A lot. I mean, you can't write and not read. I love to read poetry, and that influences also my prose. The rhythm, the way that poetry is written, that to a certain extent influences my prose as well. I mean, try to read at least all sorts of things. I love biographies, I love fiction. And then everything pulls in, kind of. There was once a student of mine who told me, but if you read, kind of, you're then influenced by that book, and you reproduce that in your writing. And my answer was, that's why I have to read a lot.
But were you always a reader when you were a small child? Did you read a lot? And
yes, I used to carry a book with me. I was so enthusiastic when we used to have the library sessions, for example.
Oh, lovely.
And like Monique said, I used to write poems. It all starts like that, when you're young.
I love those
you experiment
poems.
with writing.
Yes.
There was something before the internet. That's what we used to do, wasn't it? There was no Palm Pilots or whatever. We used to write poems. Stuff.
Yeah, in those days you wrote poems and you kept them at home and you had them secret. And these days you put them on the internet and you share them with me.
And what surprises me most is like friends that I had back at school. When I meet them now, they say kind of, oh, you always used to love writing. And I know that I used to love writing, but I mean, it was something, I guess, that struck them. The fact that I used to write, and that
something that they remembered. I mean, I have to say it was kind of funny. I just as an aside, I met my primary school friend just recently, and she said, "Oh, did you ever end up doing anything in television or acting or anything like this?" Because she had remembered that's what I wanted to do as a small child. I said, "Well, as it happens,
kind of."
Yes, I've ended up doing something like that. Your book, Grammar, is an incredibly powerful message, an incredibly powerful book. And I was talking to Jane as we were preparing for this show, and this is a question that genuinely interests me as a non-writer. Where do you find your inspiration? And Monique mentioned that she has seen people that she has based characters on. Is it the same? Does it come from your imagination, or is it something that is familiar to you? Because this is obviously quite the message of anorexia and discussing it, and the way that you've written that, which is amazing, must be drawn from somewhere. Where does that come from for you writing?
It is quite an intimate experience that I haven't spoken about publicly about it, because I've been there, so to say.
Sure.
I was borderline anorexic for some time, and I knew I had to write about it. But I couldn't write about it when I was still going through that phase.
Of course.
So the book was there in my mind for a couple of years. But then, as the healing process started, so to say, I found the time when I could write about it. So
is everything, I mean, would you then say as a writer, everything's drawn on things that you can relate to, or how much does come from your imagination as well? Because obviously there's quite a number of characters in the book.
Yeah, so the book is not me, by no means. I mean, the protagonist, she's younger than I was when I experienced this. But there are obviously characters that I've met, or instances that I've been through, or things that people that I've met say. But then everything goes in together. I don't know, things that I've read about the topic, films I've seen, everything then just pulls in together. But yes, I mean, the experience is so intimate. It was so powerful that I couldn't not write about it.
Well, and thank you very much for sharing. That we're honoured that you shared that with us, and thank you. Did it help you to write things down when you were going through that? Did you draw on things that you'd written down to help you through that process? Or have you written the book as a vehicle, as a message to help other people in a way, or raise awareness of the situation?
Okay, so neither to a certain point.
Fair enough. There you go.
So like I said, when I was going through the experience, I couldn't write. It was so real. The experience was so real. It was so powerful.
And when you're inside that,
I couldn't produce something that was creative. It was so much of a real experience that it was not something creative. It was not art. I couldn't picture it as something creative. Your second question was?
Did you do it as a message to show people, or to tell people about anorexia?
I try not to think about writing as a message or something, but obviously writers do have something to say. So I thought it would be a challenging topic for the age bracket that I've written it for, like for the 13 to 15 age bracket. But obviously, adult readers can read it and find something interesting, I hope so, in it too. But yes.
So when you sat down to write the book, did you have, I mean, bearing in mind that you were drawing from some personal references, or did you sit down and Monique was saying that her process means that she has to write the first line first, and then everything starts to flow. When you wrote and when you write, is everything mapped out? Have you got a framework? How do you go about that process? Because I'm not a writer. How do you do that?
I wrote this book when I was correcting the yearly exams of my students, because I was so bored and I wanted to do something.
Are they watching?
Don't tell them that. She didn't mean that.
Dreadful.
The class it is.
So yes, and I wanted to do something creative, and I thought now is the time. And with this book, and also with something that I'm writing right now, I usually plan out the chapters kind of, and I know what's going in where. But then obviously, as you're writing, I mean, the chapters change, the characters develop, so...
And I'm going to ask, because I'm asking lots of questions, because I know that you know some of these answers, but how do the characters develop? Do you actually sit there and think, right, Bob wouldn't have done that, he would have done it this way, and that's how it... Is it that kind of relationship that you build with the characters?
Okay, and what do you call it? A workshop we had with Alison Pick whilst I was in Iceland was about the character development, and we had to ask questions in the first person and answer them as our characters, and that helps a lot. For instance, so when you answer the questions as the character.
Wow.
That makes you fill in the loopholes that you haven't thought about the character. And then obviously there has to be a backstory, because what has happened to the character, even if the character is now 20 years old in the book, what has happened to them in the past reflects in the present and has an effect on the present. So you obviously have to have a backstory. And when you ask the questions, like in the first person, what does the person love to eat? Where does she go? That helps a lot.
So when you write, do you write, and this is everything, not just your novel, but when you go through the creative writing process, do you write for yourself because you have to write because you're a writer, or do you write with other people in mind? That is, this is a story that I want to tell. So this is a story I've got to get down versus this is a story I need to get out there.
Okay. You obviously have to have an audience in mind, and that reflects on all sorts of levels. I don't know, the rhythm you use, everything, the metaphors, the different layers of the book. So yes, I do have an audience in mind, but that doesn't mean that, like I said, other audiences can't read it too and find something different.
So you write because you know you want the story to get out there. This isn't a personal writing experience. This is a story that you want to tell and you want to get out into the public.
I love words. I mean, I love words. Even if this wasn't published in a book, I guess I would still have written it, because I love words. It's something, I don't know, that gives me so much pleasure to discover words, to see the connections, connotations between words and characters and stories. So that is something that gives me great satisfaction.
And it was funny because we were talking yesterday when we were planning the show today, and you came across this word. What was the word you kept saying?
Diaspora.
Diaspora. Is this something that writers do? Do they find a word? And because ever since
I love that.
Jane kept saying diaspora everywhere, and I'm going, what?
It was in context.
So I have this thing that there's a word that yesterday, for example, a student of mine said the word ikkakmata in Maltese.
Which means?
You stay close to something.
Okay.
And I jumped kind of with joy. That's such a nice word. And I don't know what is it about certain words, but there are words that you like, that you love. I don't know, their sound, their...
Nincompoop. Nincompoop is my word of the week. I'm trying to say nincompoop every opportunity. Oh, you nincompoop. Someone pulls out in traffic. Nincompoop. I mean, unfortunately, it's a very old word. Oh, dear me.
Where are we going with this?
Yes, I was just saying. But you were talking about writing, and it was something that you have to do. I mean, is that, and you're talking about words and fixing those in as well. So that's also, I guess, part of the process is that the language that you use as well. So we're going to talk to both of you in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Come back right here. Go and get yourself a glass of wine, because we're going to, and we'll see you in just a few minutes.
Good evening and welcome back to In Demand, where we're talking to two fantastic female authors. We have Monique Chambers and Leanne Ellul. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. And
absolutely.
Enjoy your wine.
Ladies, we're talking about writing this evening. We're talking about, and both of you have written very, and Jane also has written very different books and very different platforms for different audiences. But the three of you are female writers, are women writers. Do women and men write about different things? Would you think that men would write about something differently? Would there be a different style?
This is an interesting question, because sometimes you do find male writers that have a feminine voice, and that's a different thing. Be writing in a feminine voice and being a female. So there are writers who do this brilliantly, kind of, if they're so much into it and they've done good research, where they use a feminine voice, kind of, and that does go.
In fact, in my case, the table in Table 7 is actually a man.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I was writing him, he's definitely a man. He's a gay man, and unwittingly, he's a gay man because he's very descriptive and he's a little bit catty and very and he has a real understanding of people, and bits of the conversation he picks up on that are happening at him at the table are probably the parts that, you know, a straight guy probably wouldn't pick up on. So it's quite interesting to write, and I've ghostwritten for a guy for about 4 years as well, and I write in this person's place. And, you know, I'm him. I'm a married guy. I've got a daughter. I'm a completely different profession.
You pulled that off very, very well, Monique. Well done. I would never have guessed. But, I mean, in the times gone past, women were published as men under men's names. Yes. So how difficult is it to do? I mean, you just mentioned that you do it, but how difficult is it to swap gender? And if you were to pick up a book, all three of you, if you were to pick up, I'm asking you as well, to pick up a book, would you be able to tell whether it's been written by a woman or a man?
That's interesting.
Because you said you read a lot.
In my case, for example, if I had to talk about Graham and other works I've written, I still haven't done that. All my protagonists, or the narrator, had a female voice, and they were female characters. So I still haven't gone to that stage, because I guess there's another level to it if I had to write in a male's voice. Did you read
The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt?
Not yet.
Which is, yeah, and that's a huge, great brick of a book, written from the perspective of a young boy growing into a man, and she nails it completely. I mean, there isn't one part of that where I would think that I was listening.
But would a man say that? I mean, you're saying that as a woman. You're saying there's a woman, you read this book and you could identify. But would a man say the same thing?
I don't know.
Oh, fair enough. But if you picked up a book, would you be able to tell whether it was written by a man or a woman?
I don't know.
I think depending on the genre as well, because you certain types of, you know, the male writers that I read.
Bravo 20.
They're much
kind
more
of really
action, and it's more spy-based.
Yeah.
And they're not going to talk about her dress in such a way that a woman would talk about her dress, or a gay man would talk about the dress. It's, you know, she was wearing a red dress that clinged to every inch of her body. Yeah. Whereas a woman would say, you know, she wore a red dress that, you know, clinged to every inch of her body, you know, was slightly too tight because it showed her navel. You know, we would go that little bit. We would have to get something else in there, whether it was a compliment or whether it was a sort of...
Whether it was derogatory. Please note how I got a long word in there. Thank you very much.
There's the male gaze, kind of, that there plays an important bit. So if the book is written by a male and the voice is that of a male, the male gaze plays a really interesting, and it puts a whole completely different perspective to what is being written.
You've written as a man or a woman?
A boy, yeah.
So you've written as a boy, you've written as a teenage girl, and you've written as a gay table.
Yes.
Monique, how you mentioned that, and I'm going to come to each of you and ask each of you in a second. I know that you're hating me asking you questions, but I'm asking you anyway. When you wrote and sat down and you wrote the table, did you decide in your head this was going to be a gay table?
Not at all. It was actually the narrator who pointed out to me that was the orientation of the table. I knew it was a man. I knew it was his voice, in fact, so I'd already identified the narrator halfway through the book. The book didn't start as a book. It started as people watching exercises, and then it came into they're all in one place. Now this character needs to come and meet this character, this one needs to refer to this one. So it wasn't on purpose at all, and it was actually when we were in the studio having it narrated, there were a couple of things in the book, the way the dress was described or whatever, and he pointed out to me and said, this table's so gay. So, you know, a straight man wouldn't have said
made those observations.
So, and it was quite...
I'm wondering if we've now offended half of our viewers. Terribly sorry about that.
We don't mean to. No, we absolutely don't mean to. It's,
ladies, but so if we look at the female writing fraternity, look, there we are, that's interesting. If we look at female writers, there's so many writing forums for women, there's writing magazines for women, there's lots of information and encouragement for women, but yet more men, statistically, by quite a long way, are in print. Why do you think that is?
I would probably go for the type of book, perhaps women are more busy and we, tend to have to read magazines rather than be able to settle into a novel. I'm not sure.
Do you think? I seriously, I ask all my male friends if they read. I used to read, I don't find time to do it anymore, I wish I did. But I ask my male friends, virtually none of them read.
Oh, okay.
My book club's all women.
All
It's
my
all
girlfriends read. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm like, whoa, that surprises me.
My group of friends, they're mostly writers, and they're female. I mean, so they do not only read, but they write. And so I'm seeing kind of this change going on where a lot of female writers are at least getting out there. So there is a change kind of that's happening.
Or could it be that there are book clubs all full of men that we don't know about?
I certainly don't know about them. You've got a great
society.
I have.
They call it rugby.
So, listen, I'm going to ask you about this because Jane did point out, and this question really interests me. In a UK survey of 3,000 women writers, 39% said they didn't submit their work due to the fear of rejection. You've both had new books come out, and have you? Is this an exciting or daunting time? How much of what you do is a reaction to that process?
I don't think as myself, how am I going to say this, as a female. The thing is, I mean, I am an author, I write. And I don't feel that I'm being judged for being a female, so it was an enriching experience.
Not you're being judged as being a female, but do you think women worry more about getting their work out there or going through that process than men do?
Or do you worry about getting your work out there?
It's terrifying. It's, in my case, it's that exposure. It's your thoughts. It's you've created everything in that book. There's no hiding away, is there? There's no fact. My story is not a factual book. So you've created everything. So it's real rejection. If somebody doesn't like it, down to you.
Once you've experienced criticism, the first time, for example, I've had a play a few months ago, and there was quite a lot of criticism going on. Once you've experienced that, then I guess in my case, I was afraid now that the book was coming out.
It didn't make you tougher?
People aren't talking about it, then you haven't ruffled any feathers. You almost have to ruffle feathers to
Yes. But now I know what criticism sounds like, what it's going to be like, so even if it's good, kind of, it can still be overwhelming. So
yours is also a very personal journey as well, so I should imagine that probably exposing, and I'm not saying that yours is not, Monique, at all, but this is extremely personal, and it's also quite a tough subject to handle. So I should imagine that's also plays into it.
Yes.
Would it discourage you from writing again? Are you both of you, no, I can deal with this? And
next time I'm already working on the next thing, and indeed I have the one after should have been my very first story, but I didn't think I was good enough to be able to do it. So I'm hoping that by the time I do the next one, it builds up to the next object that describes its tenants, its people, you know. So I have no fear now. I just want to. It's almost you have to do it. It's not about fame. It's not about finance. It's you have to do it. You have to get it off your system. And there's such easy routes to publish now that actually you can do it and it can die a death and no one needs to know, or you can just take over and
you can just have it and you can just do it. How do you feel about women-only shortlists in literary prizes? Do you think that encourages women to succeed or to submit work more, or do you think it's a bit gesture towards tokenism?
For the latter, for me, I just think your work stands up. There are enough genres to go into. There's going to be, the chick flick type of fiction. There's going to be spy novel. There's going to be enough genres. You don't need to section it out. I don't think at all. You're an author.
Yes.
I'm with Monique. You're sexless.
Yes. That's why I said I mean, I don't see myself. I mean, I'm an author above anything else, I guess. So.
Listen, I think that this is the same with all people who work in creative processes. All people who work in creative processes go through a tweaking, editing, polishing. When you went to print...
We're all going.
Yeah, you're all going. But even I, as a designer, I also go through that process as well. You put you know, I've produced logos that I see all over the world and go, oh, good grief, why did you do that? But do you think that your work is finished? Is it done now?
No.
Is it... when it went to print, were you happy?
No.
Is it finished? Mine's not.
No, I've actually got a list of other people that were supposed to join the table, but I figured if I didn't do it when I did it, it was actually never going to get out.
I was afraid to open the book, kind of, because I mean, I knew I would spot something out.
Yes.
But obviously I'm happy, but...
We're coming to the end of this part of the show. We're not going to go anywhere because we're going to carry on for the show on Sunday night. But just for anybody who is watching and who's been listening and interested to find out what you do. Leanne, your book is called Grammar.
Yes.
And that's available in the shops now.
Yes, in the
Fantastic.
bookshops.
Congratulations.
Thank
and I
you.
really
Thanks
wish
a
you
lot.
all the very, very best of,
Thank you.
with that. And Monique, your book is actually an audio book, which is available on Amazon, Kindle, and as something else.
Audible.
Thanks so much. And I've, as I said, I've both read pieces and listened to parts of both of your works, and I wish you all the very best. I know that it's a really nerve-wracking process for you coming up, and also for Jane too. But thank you so much for joining us. I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
That is the end for this evening.
It is. So this has been In Demand. Thank you for watching. Join us next week, next Friday, for where we talk to some more fantastic Maltese women, but this Sunday where we continue this conversation in Demand After Hours.
Absolutely. We're actually not going anywhere. We're going to carry on, so don't miss that bit. And if you want to find out anything about these ladies' works and their books and their audiobooks, go onto Facebook, facebook.com/InDemand TV Malta, and you can find out an awful lot more. And anything with any of the other shows as well.
Yes, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again Sunday and next Friday. Cheers.